So a big reason why I decided to name my YouTube channel Finally Watched It is because, and this is gonna knock your socks off when I tell you this, there's a lot of iconic stuff that I haven't seen yet. And it's not for any particular reason, I just happen to be a big procrastinator. I mean, just look at how many videos I posted last year, and don't worry, we'll take care of that better this year. Hopefully, wishful thinking. I mean, that already sounds like I'm procrastinating already, but whatever. But self-deprecation aside, I decided this will be the year that I finally watch, I'm sorry it was right there, the movies that the film community deem as essential viewing, required reading, those movies that's like, you can't really take yourself serious as a critic, or I can't take you serious as a critic if you haven't seen these movies, even though I don't really refer to myself as a critic. I'm just kind of like a guy that likes watching movies and shows and likes to talk about them, which I guess is the definition of a critic because I put it out on YouTube. But even still, the word critic is like, I don't like attaching that to my name, at least not yet, maybe later on down the line. And it's kind of funny to me because I already know 2 years from now, after I've seen everything I quote unquote needed to see, someone is going to bring up some weird, obscure 1980s French film that has some crazy production backstory and it has like an actor that's famous now and this was like their first breakout role, and it always makes people feel sophisticated whenever they bring it up in conversation, and they're going to get in the comments being like, you still haven't seen this movie yet, I can't take this review serious, and I'll be reviewing something like the newest SpongeBob movie or something like that. And I can't front, some of them French films do be fire from the 1980s and they do be like, I'll be watching it like, oh, this is kind of good, but still the pretentiousness is a little too much for me. Now Clueless is a movie that I've always been aware of, like I've always known it existed since I want to say I was about like 13, 14, 24 now, so I've known about it for like the past 10 years or so, at least knew of its existence. I'm sure I've seen it before I was 14 or 13, but that was like the first time it was like, oh, Clueless, this is a movie that I see on the screen. I think I saw it pop up on like MTV or something at one point when they were still showing movies. I think they still might do it, I don't know, I don't really watch cable like that anymore. But it wasn't until last year where I started to realize that a lot of people have this as one of their favorite movies of all time. And I think it was because when I was scrolling through, of course, TikTok, I know, you're a TikTok scroller. I'm not ashamed of it. Whenever I've seen a lot of people do their 4 favorites, surprisingly, a lot of like actors and stuff were bringing up Clueless, and I'm like, maybe I need to watch this. Like I know it's a good movie from what I've heard, but like people were like calling this like, this is one of my favorite movies of all time, one of my favorite comfort movies. This movie is in a realm of its own, and I was eager to finally sit down and watch it because, like I said, one of the few things I heard was that this movie kind of stands the test of time. This movie is 30 years old and it still holds up extremely well, not only just as a film and how it looks, not just with the acting, but also with how they handle the subject matter and the topics that they cover. Like, this movie, as far as coming of age is concerned, is in like a completely different bracket, especially with the stuff that we've been getting recently. So the first thing that stood out to me when I sat down and watched this movie was right off the bat, it was like, okay, this is a satirical, social commentary, like it's in that type of realm. Which, for those that don't know what that means, it's basically when something is wearing the flaws of society and human behavior on its chest, and they usually aren't very subtle about it, and they mostly do it through the lens of comedy or just, over exaggerating things and stuff like that. Now, obviously, a satirical teenage movie is a far cry from a unicorn, but what separates this from its contemporaries to me is the fact that it represents and respects the character's feelings and emotions while maintaining a satirical tone throughout it.
Push the goddamn button!
Push the goddamn button!
You heard what she said.
Whereas movies in this realm, aka a movie like Mean Girls, would completely absolve characters from having, any characterization. And I know people are going to get mad at me for that, but like when you talk about this movie and compare it to something like a Mean Girls, or think of anything else like a 10 Things I Hate About You or something like that, it's apple and oranges to me, honestly, and I've seen all of them. And the thing about it is, you might not realize it at first, but when something bad happens to a good person, you actually feel bad. And the cherry on top of that is that the writers understood that as well, so instead of a demeaning joke just being passed off as a humorous moment, we actually get characters that circle back around to it, acknowledging how mean it was, and there actually is a resolution to somebody being disrespectful to somebody.
You're a virgin who can't drive. Look, I have been in agony the past week, and I can't even believe that I went off the way I did. No.
Which is, like I said, something like Mean Girls, usually there'll be a joke, or 10 Things I Hate About You, for example, there'll be like a joke and somebody will get disrespected, and that's just what it is. It's just meant to be a humorous moment. There's no resolution to it. There's no, it's kind of just played up for comedy. Whereas something like Clueless, somebody does something disrespectful, somebody does something mean, somebody does something that's like very demeaning, it gets addressed. It doesn't just like kind of go away and it's like, oh, that was just meant to be funny. They actually kind of respect that characters in these movies have feelings, because they're still characters at the end of the day. They're still meant to be played to be people. So like I said, this movie is a satire, but about what specifically? Because you can cover a lot with satirical movies. In my opinion, this movie's main focus is basically the title, which is cluelessness, which is, that's not a word, but we're going to use it here. Cluelessness, or just teenagers being clueless. And the funny thing is that the movie makes it very clear, because throughout the movie they refer to a lot of the teens throughout it as being clueless.
Did you look at that girl? She is so adorably clueless. We've got to adopt her. Cher, she is toe up.
I'm amazed that you found someone even more clueless than you are to worship you.
But it's not just that, right? Because there's a lot more going on with this. There's also, a lot of conversation going on with the social norms during this time period, the relationships that people have during this time period, romantic and friendly. It's not just, just strictly, dating people. It's also the relationship that you have with your friends, people that you don't know, that you just meet for the first time. And just how weird some of them can be when you put a magnifying glass on it through exaggerated terms, of just how people interact with each other when it comes to stuff like that. And moments like this to me are what put this movie in a category of its own. Because while on the surface it looks like just a teen comedy making fun of how stupid, rich, out of touch teenagers are, when you take a deeper look, and maybe on a second or third viewing, if you've maybe already seen it before and you haven't seen it in a while, maybe go back and watch it, you'll realize that there's a real message behind all those played up drama and slapstick comedy moments. And the message is about how, like, even though teenagers can be clueless, some of them do have good intentions and are just trying to figure out their place in all of this, which I think is something 30 years later you could argue is even more prevalent in the social media influencer era that we have right now. Because nowadays you have kids that are like 16, 17, 18 years old that are waking up, going to school every day thinking, kind of they're doing their thing, but then they're opening up Instagram, TikTok, different like forms of social media, and they'll see people their age or sometimes even younger than them being an influencer, making a whole bunch of money, and it starts to make them feel like, well, damn, maybe I could be doing more in my life. Also, this movie does a good job of not necessarily having a default bad and good person, and instead made the bold choice of making characters that do both good and bad things, which is a fancy way of describing a normal person, I know. And the only reason I say that it's bold is because, number one, it seems like a lot of kid and teen media nowadays is afraid of doing that outside of a few exceptions. And number two, putting complex characters in a satirical teen movie where the target demographic is teenagers that obviously aren't as developed as an older demographic, it can make that juxtaposition very jarring for some of them. So you definitely need to have a not only tight script, but you need to have actors that can perform it as well. Like, everyone in this movie has the right amount of carefree and comedic delivery to make the comedy work.
See, sporadic means once in a while. Try and use it in a sentence today.
Be seeing ya.
Yeah, I hope not sporadically.
What the hell is that?
A dress.
Says who?
Calvin Klein.
What's so funny?
But also the emotional intelligence to know how to deliver the scenes that are pulled into reality and aren't meant to be satirical.
Cher's main thrill in life is a makeover, okay? It gives her a sense of control in a world full of chaos.
Please.
So where does this movie sit in the ethos of coming-of-age teen film? In my opinion, it sits right at the top considering the time in which it came out. You could even make the case for this movie to be in the Mount Rushmore of teen movies just based on the sole fact that if you like others in that category, then you like this. Like, for example, if you like Mean Girls, then you like Clueless. If you like 10 Things I Hate About You, then you like Clueless, The Edge of 17, Superbad, 13 Going on 30. The list goes on movies that I feel like are just spiritual offsprings of this movie. And before you tell me, yes, I know you can make the case that without movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and The Breakfast Club, Clueless also wouldn't exist. And you would be absolutely correct in that. Also, quick disclaimer, I've seen all the movies I just listed off except The Breakfast Club, but I did see that one Degrassi episode and that one Victorious episode that were both parodies of it, so I guess that counts for something, right? And yes, I will review The Breakfast Club at some point. Whether I make a video on it, I don't know. I have to see if I want to talk about it long enough to make a video, because the ends have to justify the means to me. If I feel like I'm only going to talk about it for like 4 or 5 minutes, I probably won't do a review on it. But I just say all that to say this movie is basically flawless. As far as the movies that I've seen in my life, I think my letterbox currently has me at like about 800 or so films, a little over 800. And about, I want to say 40 something of them I have rated at 5 stars, and this one is definitely a 5-star for me. Seen it twice, saw it once just, to sit down and enjoy it and experience it and just kind of like have fun. And then I watched it the second time, obviously, with my reviewer hat on. So seen it twice, loved it both times absolutely pulled me in. If you want to give it a 5 out of 5, A+, however you want to grade it, I think I'll probably just, stick to the whole grade rating stuff and go A+. Because there is few times where I can watch a movie outside of a theater in the comfort of my home and be fully immersed in it and be absolutely locked in, and my head won't swivel to my phone or anything. And this is one of the few movies that within the first 15 minutes, I didn't even pick up my phone. I was sitting there locked in. I didn't even touch my food. I was just completely locked in this movie on my monitor. So Hats off to this movie, incredible, still holds up extremely well. If you haven't seen it in a while, please go back and watch it. It's just as good as you probably remember. And until my next video, I'll see you guys when I see you guys. Take care of yourselves, love y'all, and remember to eat your veggies.